Tim Ferriss begins by challenging widespread assumptions in the self-improvement space, especially the common mistake of framing solutions through addition, searching for pills, magical exercises, or quick fixes that promise to instantly eradicate problems. He draws a metaphor to grasping something in water too quickly and inadvertently pushing it away, emphasizing that meaningful growth rarely comes from rushing or adding complexity, but often through subtle, indirect approaches and sometimes subtraction rather than addition. Ferriss stresses that self-development is as much about learning to trust one's ability to navigate uncertainty as it is about acquiring new skills, underscoring a lifelong journey to foster that trust, largely informed by early life difficulties and reactive patterns of trying to control what is largely uncontrollable. He explains his own background, filled with trauma, hypervigilance, and efforts to white-knuckle things he could control, such as his schedule or diet, illustrating a common human tendency to seek rigid mastery over the unknown. Tim reflects on the importance of revisiting the past with a perspective that reminds him that most worrying doesn't materialize. By tracking worries that rarely come true, he has cultivated a crucial mindset, the confidence that one can figure it out and recover even after difficult setbacks. This retrospective practice has been a fundamental way to build resilience and trust in oneself. Tim vehemently challenges the hyper-independent, self-focused mindset prevalent in the culture of optimization. He suggests that much of human suffering and anxiety stems from being overly self-centered and advocates for shifting attention from self-actualization to group actualization, focusing on nurturing and actualizing the collective relationships around us. Tim underscores the idea that improving our most important relationships often leads to more natural and enduring self-improvement. He explains that the highest quality of life upgrades for him have been booking social time with loved ones and protecting those relationships as fiercely as one would a vital work commitment. This social investment should be intentional, regular, and prioritized. The interconnectedness and community-derived joy and support provide a lever for mental health and well-being that is often overlooked in the self-improvement discourse, which tends to spotlight productivity hacks or biohacks instead. A deeply personal part of the conversation involves Tim reflecting on his childhood trauma, including sexual abuse, and its profound effects on his identity and emotional landscape. He reveals how trauma led him to subconsciously cauterize his sensitivity, an act that initially shielded him but ultimately became a barrier to fully embracing his authentic self. Reapproaching and re-embracing that sensitivity after years of disavowal was both terrifying and healing. The process allowed him to reclaim a part of himself that had been walled off, enriching his relationships and empathy. Tim importantly cautions against romanticizing trauma or becoming trapped in performative suffering. While introspection and revisiting the past can be valuable, he warns of the potential pitfalls of excessive dwelling, which can entrench identity in pain rather than liberate it. Finding a balance, to neither be engulfed by past wounds nor to suppress important emotional work, is part of his ongoing journey. He credits modalities like internal family systems as helpful frameworks for navigating complex inner landscapes with compassion. Tim offers a nuanced and candid overview of his decades-long relationship with psychedelics, beginning with early exposures in school and evolving into a rigorous scientific and experiential exploration in his adult years. While he praises the profound potential of classical psychedelics such as psilocybin, LSD, and mescaline to induce ego dissolution, transpersonal experiences, and dramatic therapeutic shifts, he also voices concerns about risks, misuse, and the cultural hype surrounding these substances. He highlights that the traditional, indigenous use cases for psychedelics, hunting, warfare, divination, differ significantly from Western clinical interests focused on psychiatric treatment. Tim stresses the importance of experienced guidance, thorough medical screenings, and careful integration after experiences, emphasizing that these compounds are not casual recreational tools, but powerful interventions with both transformative potential and real dangers. His cautionary stance urges respect, education, and sobriety amid the growing psychedelics movement. Throughout the dialogue, Ferriss advocates for a delicate balance between addition and subtraction in personal development. He introduces the compelling idea that subtraction, removing harmful or excessive elements from life, can often produce greater benefits than endlessly adding new practices or supplements. He cites intermittent fasting as a prime example of a subtractive practice with powerful physiological benefits, including improved blood markers and metabolic health that, in some cases, surpass pharmaceutical interventions. Tim points out that the commercial self-improvement ecosystem is biased toward adding products and services because they are monetizable, but some of the most effective changes involve simplification and removal. This concept extends beyond diet into business, investing, and lifestyle. The paradox that people crave freedom and happiness but often reinforce feelings of inadequacy by obsessively chasing them is also framed as an opportunity to shift focus and practice subtraction to create spaciousness for flourishing. Ferriss describes a habitual framework of inquiry guiding his life and work, the relentless asking of questions and follow-up questions. He believes that the art of asking the right questions and pressing 2 minutes longer than most can unlock profound insights and solutions. Tim uses this probing strategy not only in his podcast, but also in everyday problem-solving and decision-making. He stresses the importance of being willing to ask tough, uncomfortable questions that challenge assumptions. He also underscores the value of skepticism and multiple hypothesis testing with queries like, "What else might explain this?" or "What's the cap downside with promising upside here?" This mindset allows him to navigate medical decisions, investments, and everyday challenges with more nuance and caution, combining open-mindedness with critical thinking. Ferriss offers a window into his current life by explaining how he maintains engagement across multiple parallel projects involving early-stage investing, writing, family caregiving, and creative ambitions like filmmaking. This approach of identity diversification not only fosters mental resilience against setbacks in any single domain, but also fuels energy across various interests. He likens it to maintaining a diversified portfolio to reduce volatility in emotional and professional life. His newest venture, the card game Coyote, serves as an example of a project chosen primarily for the joy and social connection it fosters. Developed over 2 years with a prominent independent game studio, Coyote is designed as a casual, accessible, highly social game that aids genuine offline connection, the antidote to the digital overwhelm and isolation that Tim sees intensifying. The game exemplifies his broader goal to create multiple doors out of the room in life, making him less vulnerable to disruption in any one area. A major theme in Tim's selection of projects and activities is energy management. He describes energy not as a vague notion, but as the fundamental currency fueling all endeavors. He has learned that choosing commitments that recharge rather than drain his energy is crucial, particularly given his history with chronic fatigue and Lyme disease. Questions like, "Will this give me more energy or drain me?" serve as primary filters for deciding yes or no. Tim highlights how even social activities and projects that bring joy feed this energy reservoir, enabling sustainable productivity and learning rather than burnout. He contrasts the common mistake of accumulating obligations without regard for energy, offering instead a thoughtful architecture of his weeks where draining administrative tasks are batched and balanced with restorative and energizing commitments. When reflecting on what constitutes an extraordinary human, Tim moves beyond fame or measurable achievement to emphasize well-being and quality of relationships. He notes that some high performers might appear enviable professionally, but have paid steep interpersonal costs, such as fractured families or loneliness. True extraordinariness to him includes feeling good about what one does and nurturing meaningful connections with friends, family, and community. This holistic view challenges the cultural myth that success is only defined by output or wealth, highlighting how interpersonal skill and relational health are foundational to sustainable happiness and fulfillment. Tim openly shares his shifting views about intermittent fasting, which he previously regarded with skepticism due to concerns of muscle loss and questionable efficacy. After rigorous personal experimentation supported by careful nutrition and strength training, he was surprised by the scale of positive health effects and improved biomarkers, even within relatively narrow eating windows. This personal experience reshaped his thinking about metabolic health and the broader potential of dietary interventions. He also shares excitement about emerging scientific advances, such as brain training technologies for vision that can defy traditional assumptions about age-related decline. These examples embody his optimism about evolving science and his openness to revising entrenched beliefs through experimentation and evidence. Toward the end of the conversation, Tim addresses a critical hurdle in self-improvement, integrating insights meaningfully into lived experience. While awareness is often gained, sometimes dramatically so, through psychedelic or therapeutic work, the translation into consistent behavioral and emotional change is frequently lacking. He emphasizes that integration is a process requiring accountability, community, and supportive structures. This notion builds on his earlier points about group actualization and cautions against the endless hunt for new experiences or knowledge without rooted application. Tim encourages listeners to embrace a balanced path that avoids both excessive introspection and reckless pursuit of the next big thing. Finally, Tim turns to questions of meaning and how to prioritize what to spend one's finite time and energy on in life. Drawing on a decade of past-year reviews and life experiments, he advocates for setting medium-term projects with clear learning and relational goals rather than rigid long-term plans. This mindset creates compounding benefits. Skills and connections accumulated transcend specific project outcomes and build resilience. He also shares a heuristic proposed by a friend: choose the option that provides the most future options. But he refines this by emphasizing that at times, the most meaningful choice is what energizes you now, allowing sustained engagement and overflow into other life areas. This pragmatic approach balances ambition with manageability and personal well-being and underscores the lifelong nature of experimentation and adjustment.